We are Georgia and David. We quit our jobs to travel full-time around Mexico with our 14-year-old Sheltie-Poo Meep. Our goal is to take a picture with her in front of 100 Pueblo signs.
Stay tuned to the end for an Airbnb tour and a breakdown of all of our expenses. Well, today is our first full day in Guanajuato. We arrived yesterday around 3:30. We just went out and grabbed some pastor and hung at the Airbnb with Meep. But now we're out fully exploring, and we've been walking around for probably like an hour and a half. We got some empanadas, which were awesome. Yeah. I got the Zarzamora in Philadelphia, which is just blackberry and cream cheese.
I got Nutella and cream cheese.
They were super, super good. And our pastor last night was amazing too. So the food so far, really, really good. It is amazingly beautiful. Google Maps is completely worthless because there are so many levels to the city, and sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. It kind of doesn't have a good idea of where you are, so you just kind of have to guess and start walking in a direction.
It's kind of like Genoa in Italy.
Yeah, so if you start like seeing the meters to your destination go down, you're probably going in the right direction. If they're going up, well, you're probably going in the wrong direction, need to turn around. But so far, really impressed, really enjoying it. Not loving the 100, 200 steps up and down from our Airbnb, but hey, you know,
it is what it is.
Good leg workout, you know.
The first church we checked out was La Parroquia del Inmaculado Corazón de María. The inside looked better than the outside. And they also had some very pretty stained glass throughout. We passed the Jardín Reforma on our way, which was full of students learning how to survey land. Then we walked through the Plaza de San Fernando, which was full of cheap outside dining options. Later in our trip, we stopped at one of them to have a cold drink and relax for a bit with Meep.
We continued walking and passed the main basilica in Guanajuato. The inside was definitely the prettiest. Unfortunately, there was some scaffolding in the main dome. Continuing on past the main plaza, we encountered numerous gorgeous buildings with intricate and different balconies. One of the other great things about Guanajuato is it seems like there's a little plaza or fountain everywhere you turn.
Next up was the Templo de la Campaña de Jesus, which looked amazing from the outside, especially at night. But we found the inside to be a little understated. We then passed the University of Guanajuato, which also looked very impressive. Like so much of Guanajuato, it is even more beautiful at night.
At this point, we were starting to get hungry, so we headed over to Mercado Hidalgo to try to find something more authentic and maybe a little bit cheaper. This market has anything you can imagine, like most markets in Mexico. Fresh fruit, fresh meat, dairy, souvenirs, clothing, home goods, and most importantly, delicious food. We stopped at Carnitas Sam. The prices here were extremely reasonable and the tacos were extremely delicious. The meat was tender and juicy and the salsas weren't too spicy. After our tacos, we headed upstairs to check out the other part of the market. After that, we headed outside, and to our surprise, there were tons of food stalls out there. The ladies had a very interesting way of getting our attention. That's an interesting After doing some sightseeing this morning and getting some really delicious carnitas at the Mercado, we headed back to the Airbnb and hung out with Meat for a few hours, and now we are headed back out. I'm getting ready to show you the journey we take to get down to town, and just remember, it is so much worse coming back up.
We decided to visit the Monumento al Pipila. On the way, we passed the Jardín de la Unión with its manicured square trees, which is right across from Teatro Juarez and Iglesia de San Diego. In order to reach the funicular or rail car that takes you to the monument, you walk between the Teatro and the Iglesia, then turn left at the end. You can't miss it. For round-trip tickets, it was 120 pesos for 2 people, or $6.
Got off the funicular. It's located kind of behind Teatro Juarez, and as you can see, the view here is awesome. After appreciating the view for a while, we rode the funicular back down. We passed Teatro Juarez and continued walking and stumbled upon a church, the Templo de San Francisco. This one had an interesting interior with large chandeliers, blue flags, and a pink ceiling. We continued walking and passed underneath Santo Cafe. It's very unique in that it has a couple of tables on a bridge over the pathway. Guanajuato has underground tunnels which divert a lot of the traffic downtown. Originally, they were built to prevent flooding. At this point, we were getting hungry yet again, so we stopped at Coastal Cultura Cafeteria. They had some great seats out on the balcony overlooking Guanajuato. The drinks were creative and yummy, and the food wasn't too bad either. For our starter, we got the guacamole, which came with chapulines, which, yes, those are little grasshoppers. They have a chili and lime seasoning on them that make them quite tasty.
Yesterday, we walked around and checked out all the local churches here in Guanajuato. And we also rode the funicular up to the Mirador, checked out the whole city from above, and saw the Pipila statue.
This morning we're headed off to the Mummy Museum and maybe to check out a couple other museums before it gets too hot. So we have made it.
That was a walk.
To the Mummy Museum. It is almost completely uphill, like the whole way. So if you don't really like climbing uphill for 30 minutes, then I would say just go ahead and get an Uber or a cab. Maybe it's like 20 minutes. I don't know.
I know what my parents meant when they said they walked to school uphill both ways now.
Yes, yeah. It really feels like that.
They say if you didn't visit the Mummy Museum, you didn't visit Guanajuato. This museum houses over 100 mummies, and it is right behind the Panteon Santa Paula, which is the cemetery where the mummies were discovered. The long and short of it is that there is a practice in Mexico where families have to pay to keep their family members buried. The first 5 years are free, after that they have to pay annually or risk their loved one being dug up. This is how they discovered the conditions in this cemetery created mummies. The long climb to the Mummy Museum resulted in some great views on the way back down.
We just finished our tour of the Alhóndiga, which was a very important building in the start of Mexican independence. And it has to do too with the statue we saw the other day of Pipila. So he was a miner. He put a big stone on his back so that way
Wouldn't get shot.
yeah, it was kind of a body armor. And he burnt down the door of this building, which was where the Spanish held all of the grain. So obviously if they control the food for the town.
People.
Exactly. So what happened after the door burnt down was a bunch of insurgents ran in and they killed a bunch of the Spanish guys that were in there. They also ran around the town and killed their families. So it was a very bloody massacre that was kind of one of the starting events to Mexican independence. On the four corners of this building, the heads of four of the main instigators were hung for 10 years until the war was over, and they were able to take them down, and then their heads were buried under the statue in Mexico City, the Ángel de Independencia. So very cool tour. It was very detailed. It was in Spanish, but I think we caught a fair amount of it.
You got more than me. After a day in museums, we were of course hungry, so we stopped at a highly rated French restaurant, La Table d'André. The food was amazing, and we both enjoyed having a bottle of wine. This was by far the best meal we had in Guanajuato.
The next morning, we got up bright and early to head down to the Guanajuato sign with meat to take our family picture. Afterwards, we stopped at a little restaurant just in front of the church, La Tasca de la Paz. There, we both ordered the chilaquiles with our ranchera. The food was okay, but the best thing about this restaurant is definitely the view. How many stars do you give the restaurant? What do you think? After breakfast, we headed on to the Callejón del Beso, which had our initials strangely scrawled on the wall. We took a quick picture with me on the lucky step. To end the day, we had dinner at Casa Velez. Its location is unbeatable across from Teatro Juarez, and the interior is absolutely beautiful, but it may be a tad overpriced. Today is our last day in Guanajuato, and we have driven only about 3.5 kilometers outside the city to this beautiful Ex-Hacienda.
San Gabriel de Barrera.
David's much better at the names than I am. So far, we've toured part of the gardens, and they are absolutely gorgeous. It is definitely worth a trip out here, and I can't imagine a cab would be very expensive given the short distance.
And it's also dog friendly, so meet this with us.
Yes. I think the entrance fee was...
It's 50 pesos a person.
Yeah,
For each adult.
so quite reasonable.
As Georgia said, the grounds of this Ex-Hacienda are gorgeous, and you could spend all day walking around them. There are a number of themed gardens as well. Oriental, Roman, Orange, and of course Mexican, to name a few. So this Ex-Hacienda was built in the 17th century by Barata, and he had a bunch of money from all the mining from around here. In addition to the gardens, you can walk around the main house of the Ex-Hacienda, which includes period furniture and decorations. Before leaving, we stopped at the Properties Cafe. The views were great, it was dog friendly, and the food was good too.
For our last night in Guanajuato, we had dinner at Mestizo. We started with ribs, and then we both ordered the steak, but with different sauces. It was very good. Afterwards, we headed to our favorite rooftop bar, Nigromante. We visited this place multiple times during our week stay. The view was great and the drinks were even better. So this is our Airbnb in Guanajuato. You can see that we have parking big enough for the Jeep, the gate, and we have a little outdoor seating area. And then when you enter the house, there's a little area to put your keys and do your shoes. And then there's a full bathroom up here. And then the living room, which has a really big TV, which was a surprise because it is actually not in the pictures on Airbnb. Big dining room set. You see there's a little balcony out here. And then there is a green space for Meep down there. Here we have the kitchen, which is a little dated, but definitely big enough to work with. And then you have a second little dining area, and then this little hall. All right, so then you come downstairs. And this is the bedroom we chose to sleep in. You can see it is a small double bed, but the mattress was the most comfortable. We didn't use this room at all. There's like a little TV space down here. David just kind of had his backpack and all the technology and things were charging over here. And then this bedroom is the one that I did my makeup at, that table there. And then we stored all of our clothes in this big closet here. And then you come down here. Here's the downstairs bathroom with full shower. And then this was the bedroom that we initially tried to sleep in, because it's a little bit darker, but the mattress was extremely hard. We couldn't do it. It was almost like sleeping on the floor. So if you just look at the numbers, it might appear that Guanajuato was more expensive than San Miguel, but we found it to actually be more affordable. Since we were only there for a week, we lived it up like we were on vacation. And when we were in San Miguel, we only went out for drinks 5 times in 28 days. In Guanajuato, in 7 days, we went out 6 times for drinks. Also, when I was in San Miguel, I cooked a meal most days and we only went out once. In Guanajuato, we ate all of our meals out, so obviously that added to the cost. Our Airbnb cost $623 for 7 days. Transportation was $58, which was a tank of gas. Entertainment was $24. We spent $166 at bars and $597 at restaurants. We only spent $11 on groceries, which was just water and ice. Donations, we spent $9. Personal care, $44. That brings our grand total to $1,532 for our week in Guanajuato, or $218 per day. In San Miguel de Allende, we spent $207 a day, and in Saltillo, we only spent $127 per day.
If you're headed to Guanajuato, we recommend checking out the Mummy Museum and Alhóndiga, as well as Ex-Hacienda San Gabriel de Barrera. If you're hungry, swing by Mercado Hidalgo for carnitas Sam. For a fancy dinner, try Table de Andre. And for a drink with a view, stop by Nigromante.
If you liked this video or found it helpful, please like and subscribe. And of course, if you have any recommendations or questions about Guanajuato, please leave them in the comments below.